Okay, good evening all, and warm welcome to today's Safeoclock Health and Safety Interactive Workshop. So it's a pleasure to have you on board as we look onto this, as we discuss this topic, supply chain resilience and worker safety. So as our culture has been, we'll start up with a brief presentation, after which we'll give room, we'll open the floor for everyone to discuss and add to their knowledge and ask questions where relevant and share our experience in this regard. So this topic seemed a bit off of health and safety, but it's very interesting and very interrelated. So as we go on in the discussion, I believe we'll be able to identify some of the relationships and why supply chain resilience is very important in ensuring worker safety. So let's kickstart with the presentation. So in these few minutes of my presentation, I will I will talk about definition of supply chain. I will also look at some strategies to enhance supply chain resilience. I will look at worker safety in global supply chains. Then we'll look at the monitoring and assessment for safety of the worker in this supply chain sustainability. So let's delve into it. What do we mean by supply chain? Supply chain, we are talking about network of companies or people who are involved in production and delivering of products and services. So this is what we refer to as supply chain. So it's a network, it's interrelated, people working together to ensure that a particular objective or a particular product is made available in the market or in the workplace. Okay, so in every project or in every organization, they have suppliers, and they have people who are responsible for ensuring that materials, equipment, and tools required for that project to be completed are available. Okay, so most of these tools or most of these equipment or items cannot be sourced in one location. They cannot be gotten in a single part. And where there is breach or where a particular item cannot be found or is not available, it will affect not just the project, it will also affect the safety of that project, because the organization or the company will start looking for alternatives or will start looking for ways to fit or amend the gap that has existed due to the break in the supply chain or due to the actual required material or the part is missing. So this raises a great concern for health and safety. So that is the major reason why we are looking at this topic today. Okay, so as the discussion goes on, I believe that some of us will be able to look into some examples where the management team has made some improvises or has brought in some items that were not originally in the item list, or that were not originally in the proposed procedures, because there were some mix-up in the supply chain. So that is exactly the direction we are more concerned as health and safety. So that is what we'll be looking at today when we start discussing, when we start sharing our experiences. Okay, so the components of supply chain include both the producers, the vendors, the warehouse, the transportation companies, and distribution centers, even the retailers. So these people or this set of organizations make up the supply chain. So if there is any break or if there is any disruption in any of these sectors, it could affect not just the productivity of the project, but also the health and safety. So that is what we'll be regurgitating today as we proceed. Okay, so what do we mean then by supply chain resilience? Supply chain resilience refers to the ability of the supply chain to prepare for unexpected events. So the actions or the procedures, the plans that the management will have in place to ensure that if there is an unexpected event or if there is a sudden issue, it will not affect the supply chain, or it will not affect the materials, the products, the items required for safe completion of that project. I'll give you a typical example. There was far back, like 5 to 6 years ago, when there was a diplomatic issue between Qatar and other Middle East, other Gulf countries. Okay, many of the organizations or many companies, many projects are depending on supplies coming from Dubai and Saudi Arabia. And because of that single break in supply, many projects suffered losses, they suffered disruption. And this is part of a disruption in supply chain. So the resilience part of it is making provisions, making adjustments, and putting measures in place to caution any effects that could result due to unexpected break or unexpected interruption in that supply chain, ensuring that it doesn't affect the project, ensuring that there is a way out of it. And when this happens, safety is also put into consideration in all these so let's look at some of the strategies through which the organization, the project, the management could ensure that supply chain resilience is sustained and enhanced. This simply means what the management of that project or the organization could do to ensure that they don't run out of materials, that the right materials written in that project specifications are not missing. And this will ensure that safety standard that has been put in place or the safety standard that has been established are also not interrupted due to interruption in supply chain. So these strategies include inventory and capacity buffers. So this is a strategy that the project or the management could put in place, ensuring that they have adequate supply, even more than enough, even more than was stated in that quotation or in that plan, ensuring that they have adequate and enough to be able to stand any interruption in that supply chain in case there's sudden incident or there's sudden event that happens that they cannot be able to get supply from their suppliers. So they already have some stocks in place that will be able to buffer this effect. So this is a strategy that the management team can put in place. Another strategy that the management can put in place is dual or multiple sourcing strategies. In this scenario, you will be able to have suppliers from different angles. You can be able to source your supplies from different directions. For example, you can source from Africa, source from Asia, source from Europe. And in case any of this supply is not available, you will be able to get it from the other angle. And these methods or these measures are put in place from the beginning so that you know where this alternate material is available. And you know where you know exactly the standard that is going to fit into the materials that you already need, so that you will not, because the original materials that is required for that item or for that project is not available, you won't go for inferior ones or start making alterations or start making some adjustments that will affect not just the project, but also the health and safety of the workers. So having a dual or multiple sourcing strategy will ensure that you are sure of getting the same standard of materials, of items, of PPE, of all the items that you need for that project. In case one of the sources fail, or in case there is interruption, maybe there is war, or maybe there is some natural disasters in that sourcing location, you already have alternative in place, and that alternative you have in place is also of the same standard with the one you already have. So having these measures in place will ensure that you will not run out of supply, and the alternative supply you have will not affect the safety of your workers. This is very important. Then the other strategy that can be in place is having a regional network. Instead of maintaining global network, shifting to regional network will ensure that you have a supply resilience, in the sense that regional network will allow for quicker response time. For example, if your supply from a regional angle or far away continent is not responding as at when required, so having sourcing for suppliers within that region will give you a quicker alternative or quicker response. And all this should be made available or put into consideration in the course of planning of that project or the execution stage. Okay, then another strategy could be to ensure digitalization in the supply chain. This simply means that put effort in having conversations digitally, having all the data you need digitally, which will help you to source for your items, source for your PPE, source for your equipment or the right tools you require in a short time, without waiting to travel to those locations or allowing your supply chain team to go to those locations, which will take more time. And if there's interruptions or if there are some issues in those locations, it will also affect the project, thereby also affecting the safety and integrity of that outcome. So let's look at the worker safety in a global supply chain. So while ensuring that you maintain resilience in your supply chain, putting safety in mind or having safety as part of the ongoing procedure is a measure that will ensure that the worker safety is sustained or is properly taken care of. So some of the considerations that should be in place is ensuring that occupational health and safety initiative is sustainable by developing and promoting circular economy or sustainable contracting. So this simply means that in as much as you are more concerned about getting your supply chain resilience and ensuring that there is no break in a supply chain, but occupational health and safety strategies should be properly in place to ensure that the workers who are going to adapt to this product or to the items that you'll be able to source from different locations, that their health and safety is put into consideration, that they have adequate training, they have adequate information about your product, about the items, about the PPE that will be delivered or that will be sourced for in different locations as a replacement to the one they already used to. So ensuring that you have sustainability in this process will ensure that the worker safety is also guaranteed. So there should be a holistic approach to sustainability, ensuring that both the environment, the social, the economic, and legal aspect of the environment or the organization is well taken care of and catered for. Not just getting a product that will not be environmentally friendly because you are trying to be sustainable, because you want to have alternative on ground. Then you go for products that will harm the environment, that will not sustain, that will not be acceptable in the environmental aspect of that location. So the other thing is to ensure that the occupational health and safety laws are properly followed and complied with, such as the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, incorporating it into the occupational health and safety management system, or trying to ensure that you comply with what the health and safety laws have said, will ensure that the safety of the worker in this supply chain is guaranteed as well. Another aspect of it is the monitoring and assessment, evaluating your safety, ensuring, confirming if the health and safety aspect of that organization is taken care of during the supply chain, sourcing and delivery, and not just concentrating on the product, the items, and the standard of the product. So the monitoring and assessment, how do we monitor this supply chain safety global sustainability? The first aspect that we can put into place is ensure that the framework of operational health and safety performance within the supply chain is followed, following the Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs. So this will help to ensure that whatever aspect of health and safety is properly taken care of, the environment is taken care of, the government requirement is taken care of, the social aspect of the economy is also taken care of. So these frameworks, they are the regulatory, technological, socio-economic factors that will impact the health and safety. So while sourcing for the materials, while improving the technology, we should also be looking into how this technology is going to impact the health and safety of the workers. If there is change in technology, if we are trying to be sustainable by having alternative technology to what we already have, this incoming technology, has it been proved? Has it been standardized? Is it actually safe for our workers and for our employees? So tools and methods for assessing occupational health and safety should be within the sustainable framework and are continually studied and refined. So there should be proper and continuous improvement in not just the occupational health and safety standard, but also in the supply chain resilience of that organization. Okay, so just like I said from the beginning, we are here to initiate this discussion with this presentation. There is a lot more to talk about in this supply chain and worker safety. So let's then hear from others or what you think, and we'll initiate some discussions. Thank you for your time. Okay, so I'm sure the topic looked a bit off from our normal health and safety topics, but it's a good one to branch into some aspects of health and safety that we don't talk about on a daily basis. So that is why we looked into this topic today. So let me keep the floor open for interruptions and other contributions.
I think the supply chain mainly is really like a logistic. I don't know. To my knowledge, I know supply chain are more or less like support, logistics, and support process. But anyway, I think this is the first time I'm getting the more knowledge on supply chain and related to safety aspects. So I will not say much, but it's to start from the knowledge.
Okay. You are welcome, Mr. Francis. We hear
Still on
from,
my way, but enjoying
yeah,
the presentation.
all right.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible, Justin.
Okay. Thank you so much for a very brilliant presentation. You basically touch all the key points with regards to supply chain management, health and safety wise. In order to ensure that contractors coming to execute projects for clients do not have much challenges with supply chain management, there are a few measures that are put in place which have over time proved to be very helpful to both contractors and clients. One is that for every EPC contractor coming to execute a project for any reputable client in an organization and organizations like ADNOC, BP, Shell, and Chevron, they have this arrangement in place. As soon as the contract has been given go ahead to start, there is usually a list of approved suppliers maintained by the client organization. And when I say supplier, it includes both manufacturers and suppliers. And like the last speaker rightly mentioned, it also includes the logistics organizations. For instance, if I'm going to buy XYZ quantity of steel materials to be transported from point A to point B, the company that is involved in the manufacture is not the one that is involved in the transportation. So how do you ensure that although you have procured some approved materials or an approved material from the manufacturer, how do you ensure that the company that is going to do the logistical transfer of these materials from the warehouse of the manufacturer to the project site also does the work safely so that from point A to point B where these materials are needed, there will be no loss by way of equipment damage or injury. And so this list, this suppliers list, comprises of all the approved companies by the client. For instance, I'll give you an example of an electric motor. Other electric motors, you could have ABB and Siemens. So just like you mentioned in your presentation, if somewhere down the line in the project, there is need to replace an electric motor from a Siemens, and that cannot be immediately available due to some unforeseen circumstances. For instance, like the political issue you mentioned in your project, in your presentation, then a substitute can easily be sourced from ABB because both of them are approved by the client. And this goes for all different type of materials that are required for a project. They're talking about integrating a supplier's personnel into the organizational safety management system so that their services will be rendered safely. The approach in the number of projects I've been participated in is that I will give you an example of a logistical company. If there is a logistical company that is going to be responsible for the transportation of materials from the port to the project site, definitely they are going to use so many trucks. And it is not feasible to say, okay, tomorrow we are going to have a delivery. So let Mustafa come for safety induction today. Or the next day we are going to have a delivery. Let Ali and Mutaba come for safety induction today. So the approach is that before the commencement of their own operation, if the number of personnel that are going to be involved are few, the logistical company is required to send the personnel on a one-off trip to the client site or the contractor site to undergo the project safety induction. So once that has been done, and this is done for all the drivers, so irrespective of who is being sent tomorrow, you know that they have all been given the project safety induction and they are aware of the requirements for the project. They know the right PPE to use. They know the parking policy of the company, so on and so forth. So these are the few contributions I needed to add to the presentation you have made. Once again, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson, for that elaborate and practical contributions to the topic. It seems you are into the supply chain management. Most of us are in health and safety, but because I work with transportation industry, so I'm a bit more privileged to have some interactions with the supply management team of the organization. So there's a whole lot of things going on in that process. It's not as easy as we think. It's not just as easy as making call and the material is on site. There's a lot of considerations. There's a lot of standards that need to be checked. And there's a lot of concerns, either legal concerns, even political concerns also, that are put into consideration before a decision is made to go ahead with this supply or to maintain the chain or even to break the chain. In the middle of the project, something can happen and the organization decides to break the supply chain by themselves, not just by events. And when this is supposed to be done, a lot of considerations are put into consideration. Even the safety aspect is one of the considerations that is always put in place. So if you want to do some amendment in your supply chain, for example, adjustment from European standards to maybe Chinese standard, a lot of safety concerns will be raised by either the client or the end user. So these factors and safety factors are always put into consideration before these final decisions are made. So thank you, Mr. Jackson, for trailing most of the points. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And just for your information, I'm actually in the health and safety, but I have been a safety lead for a number of years. And all these things we are discussing, they fall under my purview as a safety lead.
All right. That's good to know. Do we have other contribution? The floor is open.
No contribution from my side. I'm just trying to welcome myself back to the yeah, just to acclimatize. Exactly. Yeah, after a short vacation and stuff like that. So I would just want to encourage us to keep the tempo high. Okay, so this is an interesting topic, supply chain for a very big organization. I would like to say like a Fortune 500 organization. We know what a supply chain is within such an organization. So it's a very sensitive area that a lot of focus and emphasis should be. And in the supply, let me just take, for example, when you are talking about logistic company, or maybe let me just focus on logistic company. Discover that supply chain within such kind of industry is not something that can be toyed with, okay, because of the sensitivity of and the nature of business, and with also the growing form of technology around the world also has already brought a lot of advancement within the supply chain within such an organization. So it's really an interesting topic per se, but for me, that's just what I have to say. I don't have any more things to say, but with respect, when we talk about supply chain, with respect to health and safety, because when we look at it from that angle, we believe it's all about, will I say, supply of materials, okay, that fits into the safety, will I say maybe with respect to safety department per se. So you discover that in this area, there should be a consistency within such an organization, because if there is no robust supply chain management within an organization, you discover that there might be shortage of, it could be a building material, it could be a maintenance material, It could be a material that has to do with safety department. So in such situation, you discover that the operation or the construction of that project will be slow. So when you have a sufficient supply chain management or process, you can say, okay, you can have this resilience, in terms of when you have some kind of turbulence within the project, within the operation of such an organization. So such resilience will make the organization to face any challenges ahead. So it's just my little contribution anyway. So you guys have spoken well. You give a lot of one or two things. So I wish us well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Stephen. Thank you and welcome back.
Thank you.
We have any other contribution?
All right. Good evening, everyone. I think everyone that has spoken on this subject has spoken very brilliantly. Supply chain, like you said, is a silent topic when it comes to the health and safety. I think the time I happened to come across it was when I was taking a course on ESG, which was a self-study. From what I could deduce from the supply chain, I think supply chain in the health and safety context, looking at especially in environment and sustainability. So it's taking into concept the manufacturing of materials, which is life cycle, and also looking at the circular economy of those materials, how the materials are transported from the point of the manufacturing industry down to the commercial and the industrial sites, where maybe installation, processing is being taking place, and finally to finally to the end users, or rather should I say consumers. So in between this process, it's just like inputs to the activity to the output. So supply chain in all of this process, safety is now looking at the environmental, social, and governance, which you have even emphasized, on the logistics. There are a whole lot of factors that are taken into cognizance, in terms of political factors, transporting, lifting of hauling of materials, from one point to the other, maybe from the jetty down to the construction project site where to be utilized, making sure you have a robust transportation safety system, making sure you have good health and safety programs to manage the process. So for me, I think that's the part that supply chain actually play in health and safety. And even in terms of the environmental, we are still considering the waste aspect, which boils down to the hierarchies, waste management, recycling of those materials, recycling of the material, reuse of the material, recovering of the material, not just bringing those material and, because most of them are not biodegradable, and leaving them in the environment, but ensuring that there is plan for recycling, reuse and recovering in the process of the supply chain or supply of material to the site. I think I will stop here. Thank you. That's my contribution. Like I said, I'm a total novice when it comes to supply chain. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that wonderful contribution. Mr. Tayab asked a question in the chat box. He said, how to balance operational safety and delay in transportation of materials in view of resilience. Okay, so in this, to answer you directly, there is, during the slide presentation, there is one particular slide when we talked about enhancing supply chain resilience. We said one of the factors or one of the concepts that we can employ is sourcing regionally and moving away from global sourcing. So I think this that will help to prevent a delay or balance the delay in transportation. If you source regionally, for instance, you are sourcing within Gulf region, it will reduce the time it will take for the materials or for the items to reach, more than when you are sourcing from globally, maybe from Europe or from other continents. So that will ensure that your transportation is shorter, the time it takes for delivery is shorter. So all this aspect is put into consideration from the onset. During the planning stage, you plan where you make research, reach out to manufacturers and suppliers, and concentrate on within your region. That is one angle that can be employed to ensure that this delay is overcome or prevented. All right, Mr. Francis, you can go ahead, contribute.
Yes, for example, just to buttress more on what you said, like when I make mention of Fortune, maybe Fortune 500 companies, like big organization. Let me just take like McDonald's for an example. So you discover like what you just said now, you discover that maybe like in the Middle East or Qatar to be precisely, you discover that whatever they are using to make their different kind of whatever they have and whatever they sell, they source for those materials locally instead of depending on those materials coming from maybe US, where this McDonald's of a thing started from and all that. So you discover that most of the material they use to prepare their food stuff, their kind of stuff that they sell, all these things are sourced locally. I just try to bring out this point to buttress what you have said as an example so that we can get a picture of what we are talking about. Because if you said you're expecting what they want to use to do pizza coming from US or coming from another country, we know how long that will take, to meet up to the operation. So definitely you have to source material within. Even when they have, if you could remember, when they have this blockage within the GCC, at some point, even Qatar majorly depends on even some food product. They depend on their neighboring countries, even some building material, even down to the pipe, these PVC pipes and all those things. But when those things happen at the end of the day, they began to look locally and began to produce all those things. They began to go into more agriculture, whereby you see tomato and all those kind of vegetable things. So, they became so resilient with the effects of the blockage they had then. You understand? Because this helped them to start producing things locally to meet local operational need or consumption need. I don't know if you guys get my point.
Yes, your point is very clear, and it's related to exactly what is asking for. Now, there's one I want us to. We are talking about supply chain, and it will, some people who are not yet into that higher ladder of health and safety, it will look too big for you to understand. Let's bring it low into your PPE. So even if you're a safety officer, you could have some hold of your PPE purchase and those approvals. There was a time in one of my projects that we ran out of PPE, we ran short of PPE, right? And we decided to source locally, or we wanted to get a quick one in some stores. And so it took some time, but some of the ones we are getting, compared to the standard we had, compared to the quality that we are using before, we are lower, right? It was cheaper. So we were not prepared for this ahead of time. We didn't prepare that we can suddenly run out of materials or out of PPE, or that we can suddenly have a surge or an increase in the manpower, which will require us for looking for more PPEs at a very short time. So this supply chain resilience is a type of consideration that we should all put into place, especially in our safety-related items, that in case this happens and we need an urgent replacement, where can we get it? How can we get it? And the ones that we are going to get, is it going to be the same standard? Is it going to be the operational level? Is it going to be up to the standard that the ones that we had from the beginning it will be? So this is the angles where we can look at it practically on how we are going to get prepared and get ready. Because most of these PPEs, because it's only tested when there is an incident. For example, you are using helmet. When you purchase helmet, you don't use hammer to start hitting it to test it. It's only when an incident happens, then you will be able to figure out if this helmet was able to prevent that head injury or not. So some of them are not, you don't test it while buying it, but there are some standards that should be met. So purchasing those type of items that do not comply to those standards is a red flag, and which can be high risk also in the organization or in that project. So Satayab is saying in the chat box, it means in order to sustain produce locally and develop product as much possible to combat with blockage and to survive in a view of supply sustainability. But if we will produce the product not have ISO certification and audit compliance. No, it doesn't mean because we want to be sustainable and rely safely, doesn't mean that we'll just accept any standard. We have to subject those products also to test and ISO standards and certifications. And that is part of the sustainability and this supply chain resilience that should be in place. Should have in place, have alternative, ensure that those alternatives are also up to standard, not just having alternatives. It should be the minimum standard that is required. So it's not that we are encouraging to have fake local products in exchange for the international standard ones. So I think that is it. Do we have any other contribution to be able to, what are the limitations for inventory buffer excess? The limitations could be a space, It could also be longevity of the product. For instance, if we are saying, from the example I gave, that we ran out of PPE supply. So if we had a large inventory or excess inventory to stock, some of the limitations we could face would be space, because you might not be so correct on predicting when you will need it. Okay, so if you are not having sufficient space to store these items, and also if these items have longevity issues, like if the items can expire within a short period of time, so purchasing it in a very large quantity to store because we want to meet up with our supply chain resilience requirement, then it's also a limitation. So we also consider the items, for example, helmet, safety helmet has expiry date, right? So because we want to meet up with our supply chain resilience goal, we purchase a large number of helmets and store them. And within the next 3 to 4 years, it expires. So this is also part of the limitations that supply chain resilience arrangement can face. Okay. Another thing is the environment also. Maybe as the weather changes, as there is increase in maybe temperature, it could also affect the materials or the items that you have stored, because you want to have an inventory buffer for your supply chain. So these are also some of the limitations that could be faced. Another limitations could be maybe loss in inventory, loss in documentations. If you have kept these items for a very long time, maybe due to employees resigning or change of key employees, we may not be able to keep track record of the items available and their storage lifespan. So these are some of the limitations that inventory buffer could also pose. So that is just my answer to that. Mr. Valentine, you are highly welcome.
Thank you.
So, do you have any other contribution before we end for the day? Yeah, Tayab, your point in the chat box is very correct. Safety conditions and materials, they vary depending on the industry, depending on the project, and depending on the items or materials required. So that is why the supply chain management put into consideration. It's not something that is too fixed. It's dynamic based on industry and based on requirements. So it's only based on that industry that you list your items, source for it, and ensure that you have a buffer for any interruption in the process. All right. Do you have any expert opinion about precast industry where overhead cranes are operational? Is in that industry or in that operation, there should be proper management of that work in, location, in the sense that restriction of access should be there, and the riggers or the operators should be properly trained. So these are some of these things. And the precast, from the precast stage, chemicals are involved. So those chemical safety procedures should also be considered. Then in the movement, the crane movement, those things should be considered as well. The maintenance of the crane, the training of the crane operators. So these are some of the factors that should be considered. So it's not like, it's not too tedious. It's something that is proper safe work management will be able to address in conjunction with the operational team, not just the safety. So, do we have any other contribution before we call it a day? Okay, so in the absence of further contributions, I want to thank everyone for joining today, especially Mr. Jalsin for your expert knowledge, Mr. David, Mr. Stephen, Mr. James, Mr. Tayab. So thank you all for always showing up. and doing justice to the topic. Mr. Valentine, we thank you also. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Francis, as well, for joining Inside the Bus.
Thank you for a brilliant presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Sarat. Sarat, you always,
Thank you, my brother.
always available.
Yes, so well done.
Yeah. Amojade, thank you also for, I know you're experiencing network issues, but you are still resilient in catching up. So thank you, guys. I appreciate all the time and all the experience we share here. So see you again next week. And I'm also open to receive suggestions on topics we can look into. All right. Thank you and see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.